Good morning, afternoon or evening, ladies and gentlemen, Allincrypto here, and welcome back, guys, for another jam-packed daily market update. We are going to start the video off with some comments made over at the Bitcoin conference in the US by David Sachs, who of course is the AI and crypto czar. And he very much admits, and they're all admitting at this point, what we already know, and that is that crypto is the future of finance, but more broadly the future of systems. More generally, yesterday we spoke a little bit about quantum computing. There was a research paper published by Google that essentially suggested that quantum computing plays far more of a threat to Bitcoin than people had initially thought. BlackRock obviously updated their Bitcoin ETF to allow a clause for quantum computing. So it's obviously something that they're thinking about. And it's a real threat to Bitcoin. And I always say this, actually, it's more of a threat to everything. And one way you can combat not just the dangers to the financial sector, but the dangers to the world more broadly is by putting things on chain, certainly quantum resistant chains, and implementing things like smart contracts, which makes things a lot harder to breach. You know, if quantum computing gets to the stage where it can actually fault Bitcoin, your financial system as you know it, data systems, everything is already destroyed at that point. Bitcoin kind of becomes the last of people's worries, but I think there's a bullish takeaway for crypto more generally in regards to what it can do, and this whole idea of Web3 and us building the internet on top of distributed ledgers. Anyway, I digress. It's a very interesting thought. We're going to kick things off with David Sachs, what he has to say. We've got two clips, one from the Bitcoin conference, one where he's on Fox News. Then we're going to talk about the SEC is hosting a meeting on digital assets and tokenization on June the 5th. This has just been called, and this is going to feature the likes of BlackRock, Fidelity, and Franklin Templeton, and more. Then we'll look at what BlackRock actually has to say about Bitcoin. They relate it to gold and say it has much higher upside than gold. And I think you can get that from the law of small numbers. Gold sits at, or what is it, 13, 14 trillion in terms of market cap. Bitcoin is a trillion something. It potentially got a long way to go. Could it get to gold's market cap? Who knows? I know they're going to push the narrative of Bitcoin as a store of value. And they already are. Not what it was initially intended to be, which is a peer-to-peer electronic cash. And anybody who believes that Bitcoin is following Satoshi's vision, I personally think is uninformed. And that's not to say that Bitcoin hasn't done miraculous and amazing things. Then we'll talk about some price action, and we're going to relate that to over-the-counter Bitcoin addresses, so addresses that are used to make over-the-counter trades. And then we'll compare that to Bitcoin exchange reserves. There's a supply crunch coming. My play on Bitcoin is miners. I own a number of miners. I own 3 miners, Terrible Swan. I won't mention the other 2. And I own quantum computing stocks, or a stock, and might get into the EV sector, maybe, although Tesla's very dominant there. But I do think they're going to play a role in the world that we're moving towards. And also, potentially silver miners look interesting. So let's get into it. Let's start things off with this clip of David Sachs at the Bitcoin conference.
I don't want to measure, what we accomplish exactly through price levels. I guess I want to measure it through innovation levels, but I will say that I did notice that Bitcoin just hit a new all-time high the other day, and that was great to see.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence.
It's not. Yes, I mean, look. At the end of the day, we see that blockchain, Bitcoin, crypto. This is the financial system of the future, and we want this innovation happening in the United States. We don't want it driven offshore. That's basically what was happening before. Is because under the Biden administration, and as we all know, Elizabeth Warren had the auto pen, all this innovation was being driven offshore. It was being driven to other countries, and that's not the American way. I mean, the American way is always to be the innovator, the leader in technology, and we want this financial revolution happening in the United States. We want to be leading in this. We don't want to be driving it offshore. It's crazy. This is the financial system of the future, Jesse, and we have to encourage it. What the Biden administration was doing, and let's face it, it wasn't Biden. Elizabeth Warren controlled the auto pen during that administration. She, for some reason, has this pathological hatred of the crypto community. She wants to drive this community offshore. She doesn't want it happening in the United States. That's the wrong policy for the United States. We want all the innovation happening here. This is a financial system of the future. It's cheaper, it's more efficient. We want it happening here, Jesse, and I think people are thrilled that President Trump is making that possible.
I mean, how much more evidence or how much more confirmation do we need to get in regards to this technology being the future of the financial system? I think you quantum proof the financial sector, but more broadly systems more generally. And that's why I sort of went on a tangent there, because this technology is unbelievably useful. And it is not just the future of finance. The future of systems more broadly are distributed, global in nature, and it moves us all towards this sort of one world system that we'd love to do. You know, we might start a second channel where we talk a lot more about all of this kind of stuff, because I know many of you are interested, kind of understand that, or understand the game that you're playing, and perhaps you'll play it a little bit better. So that's very interesting. David Sachs, again, confirming what we already know. This is coming, and it's interesting because it's a Bitcoin conference. There'd have been a lot of altcoin talk there because you just can't ignore it anymore. You know, Bitcoin has very much been the star of the show. I think still the leader of the pack, of course. But that's a bullish thing, I would say, not a bearish thing. Bitcoin dominance where it is more of a bullish thing than a bearish thing for altcoins, in my opinion, because I still think that dominance decline, and eventually I think we get to 5% Bitcoin dominance is still to come, and we're still at this kind of infancy stage as an industry. There's a lot of utility, not much usage. That's all to come. And if this is to be the future of finance, like David Sachs is saying there, they're all saying now, that's an exciting prospect for me as an investor in this technology. And you guys as well. Of course, invest at your own risk. Just in, SEC to host meeting on digital assets and tokenization on June the 5th. That is next week, is it? Featuring panelists from BlackRock, Fidelity, Franklin Templeton, and more. It's in line with the enabling of all of this. We're still yet to really have clear regulatory clarity, period. I know we're getting on stablecoins because the US is going to adopt stablecoins. We're interested in the people that are going to facilitate that and enable that future of money. But this is, again, another step in the right direction. It aligns with everything we're talking about. And what I want to do now is actually dive into what BlackRock said. I think he's the head of their digital asset strategy. What BlackRock actually said over at the Bitcoin conference. Lots of great things coming out of this great conference. I know a lot of people there. They're really enjoying it. You know, if you can pop over there, by all means do so. Let's dive into what BlackRock had to say yesterday.
Firstly, I don't think one needs to look at the competition as zero sum, right? They are, in many ways, sort of different angles on a similar theme, a similar investment thesis and worldview, right? They both are global, scarce, decentralized, fixed supply assets, right? They're both detached from those, traditional country and systemic risks, and that's why investors are drawn to them. And gold today is much less volatile and has a much longer history. But Bitcoin is digitally native in an increasingly digital world, is efficient to store, can be transferred anywhere in the world in near real time at near zero cost. So it has some significant advantages too. I think there's no question Bitcoin has much higher upside than gold and lower downside, right? And so there's different flavors of it that investors have, and many investors are going to own both. We see lots of investors adding to both. We see some switching from, maybe they were 100-0 gold Bitcoin and they went to 80-20 or they went to 50-50. We see a lot of that, but certainly as a category, as a sort of diversifier and hedge, Bitcoin and gold is growing.
Very interesting. I would say Bitcoin does have certainly higher upside. You said less downside, but it's very interesting. They're certainly pushing Bitcoin as a narrative, and they have every reason to. It's a marvelous creation when you think about the fact that somebody called Satoshi Nakamoto just created this tech, and it's like the fifth largest asset in the world in terms of market cap. And that's not true. In terms of a company looking at market caps, it's kind of disingenuous when people talk about market caps of things and put Bitcoin in that 4th, 5th position, because there's way bigger markets like currency markets, derivatives markets, so on and so forth. Even derivatives markets around like stocks and things. But Bitcoin, in our opinion, is going to climb higher. We get that technically. We've had that technically since we got back into the markets down here. We've called this beautifully, even in regards to the recent price action, and we've said actually it's going to continue. We looked at a falling wedge, and then we looked at a kind of inverse head and shoulders that's setting up. You want to learn TA, guys, do become a Patreon. Also, you'll unlock my full portfolio, et cetera, et cetera. Influx of new members. Really happy to have everyone on board, and we'll be doing a meeting today. We'll be getting into some things. But Bitcoin's going to continue, in our opinion, and it continues to get gobbled up. And there's only going to be more and more buyers coming to the party. So we're still yet to really see nation states. They might be doing it privately, but publicly do it. And on a mass scale and in a kind of arms racy fashion. And you're going to see more micro strategies. I know Jack, whatever his name is, the Lightning guy, he's setting up something there. Metaplanet. You're going to see more and more of these, and it's just going to continue to add to the equation of supply and demand and continue to drive Bitcoin's price up until there's a reason for it not to. Bitcoin OTC addresses cohort balance. You can see this continues to get reduced aggressively, certainly during this uptrend, which you'd expect. And if you look at sort of exchange Bitcoin, which you probably won't be able to see because my head's in the way, it's literally a kind of an all-time low for exchanges. And that's all going to contribute to Bitcoin's price continuing to rise, which of course we've got technical merit for, and there's all this fundamental great news. And I think some of you are probably quite frustrated with altcoins. I've done very well from them. I still have altcoins like XRP. It's up 300% for me since I started investing. We really pivoted back into the market after 2022. We got out for the bulk of that bear market. We got back in at the start of 2023. And, you're talking about 2 years basically of accumulating altcoins. But that's how investing goes. People want instant gratitude and instant gratification. And that rarely comes. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes it will. But the game of investing is to do exactly that, invest. And time can be your worst friend or your best, your best friend or your worst enemy. And it's up to you, and I always think, that's very much your perspective in regards to life. You can either have a good time in life or you can have a bad one. You actually have a lot more to play in that really than even circumstance. I know some people that have had horrible lives that are the happiest people I've ever met. And I know people that have had amazing lives that are the most miserable people I've ever had. It's all perspective. We're all built differently. And that applies to the investment arena, which is why I'm talking about it. That's it from me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to love and leave each and every one of you. It's always a pleasure. I love talking to you guys. Thanks everyone for the support. And I'll see you all in the next one.